Hello and welcome to this live edition of the Albion Obsessed podcast. Today we are going to dissect the 2-1 win at Stamford Bridge. But before we get into that, let's see who we've got on the show today. We welcome back Joe. Joe, my friend, how are you doing?
Absolutely bloody wonderful, Tom. It's been a great day. Got a letter through today saying that my house move is going to go all swimmingly well. So a Brighton win could only top that, and a Brighton win has topped it. So I'm on top of the world, Tom. Loving life.
That's fantastic, Joe. Good for you, my friend. Good for you. We also welcome back Dagan from across the pond. Dagan, my friend, how are you keeping?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me back. Injuries aside, and near heart failure over the course of the day, but I'm here and happy with the result.
Very good. That's what we like to hear. Now, of course, we are live, everyone. So if you have any talking points you'd like us to discuss, please drop a comment and we will discuss them as we go along. So let's start off by talking about the starting 11, Joe. A big call. What initially seemed like a big call was that Jason Steele was not in the match day squad. We later found out that was due to injury. But it was a chance for big Bob Sanchez to come back in and stake his claim. How did you feel seeing Sanchez's name back on the team sheet?
Yeah, no issues. I've always, howler aside at Selhurst Park, I've always rated Robert Sanchez, and whenever you see him between the sticks, you always feel somewhat confident. I know a lot of fans don't, but that's in my opinion. I thought before I knew it was an injury, I thought maybe he was spinning it so Big Bob got a league appearance in before the FA Cup semi-final, and Steele would have played the semi-final instead. But obviously, I don't know how that injury is coming along for Jason Steele, and obviously he wasn't on the bench, so looking like it's probably one that's going to keep him out. But yeah, with Big Bob, it's always one of the things. He's been so reliable. And it's never a worry. Andrew's in the comments. Hi, Andrew. Nice to see you, mate. All good.
Good. How about you, Dagan? What did you feel about the starting 11? Were you confident when you saw that starting 11 go up that we could get a result against a Chelsea team that are very much not up to their usual high standards this season? Oh, Dagan, you're muted, my friend. You are muted.
I am sorry. I was trying to be courteous. No, I was very confident. My buddy, who's a Chelsea fan, texted me pre-game and said, "You're getting our B team." To which I replied, "You're getting our B keeper." No, I was happy to see Ferguson in the starting lineup. A little worried about what we're going to look like in the next 2 weeks, but next man up continues to be successful.
Very much so, very much so. It was a strong starting 11. So I think after last week, I was a bit concerned that we might have a little bit of a hangover left over from Spurs, but it did not take long for my worries to be sort of pushed aside, because I thought we started really well, didn't we, Joe? We had lots of early chances. Brighton were very much dominating possession, dominating all the chances, and creating a hell of a lot. But it did almost feel, didn't it, like it was just going to be one of those days.
Yeah, it's always frustrating when you see all these chances being created, but I always say that the worry comes when the chances don't happen. That's when, as a fan, I would be worried. But when you keep plugging away, and when you've got the quality that we've got, you always feel like that goal is going to come eventually if we just keep plugging away. And I'm really glad that did happen. One of those things when obviously the goal goes in for Chelsea, you're like, really? A goal like that is going to be the thing to sink us. And as you say, Tom, it did sort of feel, are we going to be that unlucky? But surely we can't be that unlucky 2 weeks in a row. Lightning doesn't strike twice generally, and the worries were creeping in. But as I say, with our quality, I'm always confident that we will get some chances and we will put them away.
Yeah, that confidence is something that I think I didn't perhaps have over the last few seasons. I thought we were always a team that would create lots of chances, but we could never put them away. But under Zerbi, that seems to have been evaporating. Now, Dagan, just before we came on air, you said you had some stats about our shooting. Would you like to share some of those now?
Yeah, so I just read those really quickly, looking at the last 4 games. So since our Grimsby Cup match, 3 road games, 1 home game. The home game being Brentford, and then we had Bournemouth, Tottenham, and Chelsea away. 92 shots in 4 games. 26, 17, 16, 33 in reverse order. Our opponents, 38 shots. So that's 23 to 9.5 on average per game. Shots on goal over the 4 games, 35 to 13.
Wow. That's just incredible stats. And yeah, mind blowing, isn't it? It's just I can't believe this, the attacking football we play. To go to Stamford Bridge. I mean, okay, we know that Chelsea are in this dire run of form. We get that, but to go to Stamford Bridge and to have, I wouldn't say the audacity to play that way, but just to go there with absolutely no fear, Joe. I mean, in seasons gone by, we would never have done that. Never have done that.
No, and that is just pure De Zerbi ball in full swing. He's spoken again about them. Yeah, exactly, Tom. He's spoken again about the mentality of his players in the post-match interview, saying about how we closed the game and saying that that's an aspect that we have to improve. And I absolutely love it when even when there's just such a, I would say probably an 8 out of 10 performance today. It wasn't perfect by any means, but 8 out of 10 is absolutely fantastic in the Premier League when you're fighting for Europe, when you go into a place like Stamford Bridge. Lampard's first game back at Stamford Bridge as well. They're off the back of a disappointing result in Europe. They want to bounce back. To go there and have that mentality to say, you know what? We're not scared because you're Chelsea. We're not scared because you've paid £600 million for all of these absolutely finished players. We're Brighton. We've got a stunning way of playing football. By the way, a way of playing football that Pep Guardiola described as the best in the world. Whether that's mind games or not, because we've got a game coming up against them, who knows? But still, Pep Guardiola is saying Brighton are playing the best football in the world right now. To hear that comment as a Brighton fan is just utterly mind-blowing. This is a guy that's won everything as a top-tier manager, and he's recognizing this. And De Zerbi has spoken about Pep Guardiola before as well, about how much he admires his work. And to see, class recognizing class is just, I love it. I think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And Lewis Punk has just posted, BBC guy asked Roberto De Zerbi about mentality. Roberto De Zerbi talks about balls. Yeah, we've seen this before. Big balls, and that's just the way he plays. It was quite nice to hear him in the week, Dagan. He said that he was just a normal coach, but what I think he's doing at Brighton is far from normal. Now I know, Dagan, that when you were like researching what Premier League club was going to be your club, you must have seen like over the previous seasons how like we have just grown into the Premier League. What have you made of Roberto De Zerbi? Brighton, under Roberto De Zerbi.
I talked a little bit about this last time I was on. It's belief, right? It just the transition from the hesitancy that we saw to shoot, to make that final pass with Potter. As strong as Potter was, and I really believe he's a talented manager and will have a long, successful career. Best to him, despite the setback to our club initially, right? This is the great gift that we've now received, playing the most exciting football in the world. So, no, I mean, it's the belief that he's instilling in the players, the transformation of guys like Solly March, the emergence of these young players who are stepping onto the pitch and clearly have all the confidence in the world. I mean, the audacity to take the shot that Enciso did and ultimately converted on, right? I mean, I don't think he takes that shot under Potter. Well, and he also probably doesn't see the field. So just belief in the team and their belief in themselves and the change of the narrative to we're playing for Europe, not, well, we're happy for a 0-0 draw. It's Premier League, the best league in the world.
Yeah, I know you're spot on, Dagan, because I think you just see that belief oozing from the players. Unfortunately, we didn't have it all our own way. And in fact, it was just sod's law that, of course, the first goal that Chelsea score in, I think it was 9 games. They hadn't scored in the first half at Stamford Bridge for 9 games, something like that. And so, of course, it would have been against Brighton that they did that in. And it was their first goal in 3 games. So, but it was a cruel deflection. Chelsea hits on the counter attack. Webster a bit out of position, gets dragged, and then it hits Lewis Dunk and it loops over Sanchez. Joe, a bit of a cruel goal to concede, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the bit that annoyed me the most about the goal is just how out of position Webster is. You can't, even though Chelsea are really poor this season, you can't take those liberties of being so high up the pitch and leave that big gap between him and between Veltman and Dunk, because that was just acres of space for Chelsea to play into. And then again to find himself out of position a little bit later in the phase of play. So twice, it's relatively naive defending, I said in the group chat, and I still stand by that. Unfortunate for Big Bob, because he sort of adjusts his feet and can't quite get across. So you think if he just maybe didn't adjust his feet, he would have gotten that extra inch to save that. So you can't blame Big Bob for that at all, because the wicked deflection, and it's just one of those freak goals where Chelsea are begging for something like that to happen to them. That they are begging for that sort of luck to lift them out of this slump that they find themselves in. And it's, as you say, Tom, just so happens to be that it was against us, and you start thinking, is this I tweeted, right, here's where it all changes, because the turning point I feel for our massive success this season was that Chelsea game, beating them 4-1 at home. And I was sort of thinking, I hope there isn't another turning point here where this is what pushes Chelsea on to do so well and starts to see our slump down the table. We've seen Aston Villa picking up form. Spurs getting their points last weekend, but unfortunately didn't get their points today. What a shame. What goes around comes around. But there are teams that are still in and around that fight with us. So it's so important for us to not let this momentum switch. And I really thought at that point, is that what's going to happen here? And I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, it was a really cruel goal. It was against the run of play, and it was just so frustrating to watch. Dagan, what did you make of it?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. It was against the run of play. And it felt so much like the Tottenham goals, where sort of we just switched off for just a second. My text thread, shout out Matt, Christian, and Dunk, who've been a part of my soccer education over the past several months. But they said, just poor defending, right? You can't blame that on the keeper. Way too much space. And we had a moment, I can't remember the exact moment of the game, that was similar with, I think it was Mudryk coming down the left in the first half. And he got a look that was almost identical to Son's shot last week. And he hit it wide. But I just thought there were these little glimpses. And then, towards the end of the game today, again, the sort of switching off was like, is it gonna bite us, playing a nearly flawless game, but having these just few glimpses. And it's hard. You can't play perfectly, right? We can't expect that they're perfect. But it does seem disproportionately that one mistake that we make has cost us in so many games this year.
Yeah, it really has. It tends to be one of those stats that's just infuriating. You see the opposition, 1 shot on goal, 1 goal scored, which it was really frustrating. And I think compounded with that, Joe, by the fact that we just couldn't seem to score. It just really felt like one of those days. And then to make things even worse, Joel Veltman, ended up coming off injured. But in a way, what seemed to be a bit of a disaster at the time actually turned out to be, in my opinion at least, the turning point of the game. Because bringing on Julio Enciso and moving Gross to right back turned out to be a bit of a strategic stroke of genius.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit worried about Julio, and he's proven me wrong over the last few games. Obviously, a goal against Bournemouth, and we'll talk about the strike later. But I'm always worried about his physicality and whether he's going to get sort of bullied off the ball and sort of bullied out of the game. But he seems to be adapting so well to this league, and he seems to be just absolutely loving life under Zerbi. And as you said, Dagan, under Potter probably doesn't even see any game time. And again, goes to prove just how amazing Roberto De Zerbi is giving these youngsters that confidence to go into a Premier League game at Stamford Bridge and take the game by the scruff of the neck. And people always worried about Pascal Gross moving to right back. Tom, you've had your famous rant about that on this podcast.
Hey, that
but
was right wing back.
It was
different role entirely.
Yeah, fair enough. No, but you say Pascal Gross at right back. I can clip it in, Tom.
I'm here for it, mate. I'm here for
absolutely. But honestly, like Pascal, anywhere on the pitch just puts in such a shift. And to be honest, as you mentioned in the group chat, Tom, Veltman hasn't been overly impressive of late. So maybe it's that sort of not luck, because I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's lucky Joel Veltman got injured, because, you know, I don't wish that on any of our players. But for Pascal Gross to play that role in a game where he's had to be so professional and so regimented, and give the class that Pascal Gross gives as well from that position. His partnership with Solly March, for example, I absolutely adore. So, yeah, it's one of those things that luckily went for us, but could have heavily gone against us.
The piece of those two substitutions that I think really worked in our favor, more so than Gross sliding to right back, was both Welbeck and Enciso coming on together meant Enciso slotted higher up the pitch and pushed McAllister back. And for me, again, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, I love him in that deeper role, and I thought he was much more controlled, much more influential in the game from that position. So, I mean, and Enciso's energy, you know, was everywhere. He was like omnipresent from that, from that spot.
That's a great spot, to be fair, Dagan. You know, that didn't even cross my mind. So yeah, as you say, McAllister in that deeper role, I love. Perfect.
Yeah, I do agree. I think McAllister works better alongside Caicedo in that double pivot. And then Enciso's energy was just infectious. And if you looked at him towards the end of the game, he looked dead on his feet. He was exhausted. And it was really nice to see Danny Welbeck be like, no, you go over there and I'll do a bit of running around over here. And it just shows you Danny Welbeck's professionalism. And we will talk a bit about Danny Welbeck in a minute. But I do want to talk about one other controversial thing, and then I promise it's all hunky-dory. And that was the penalty shout, where Mitoma bursts through, and Joe's going like this, but he hits his hand. I do not understand how last week we saw a handball given against Mitoma for hitting there, but Pulisic, it hits his hand when Stupinian is hit. You know, they're jostling side on side. I just don't understand how the rule is. If it hits any part of your arm or hand during an attacking phase, it's ruled out. But in the defensive phase, it's absolutely fine. I just don't understand.
Yeah, it is a super weird one. Lewis Punk. Is that a play on Lewis Dunk's name? If it is, that's really good. But Lewis Punk has said not a pen. I agree. But I don't agree with the rule, Tom. So I agree that in the rules of the game at the moment, as it stands, no, it's not a penalty by the book, because what's happening is Pulisic is getting his arm across to stop. I think it was a Stupinian, and his arm's coming up naturally, which happens in a natural running motion. And as he's done that, Stupinian's coming to the back of the hand, and it looks like Pulisic is batting the ball away. And so I understand in that sense that it can look like a blatant movement, but in the flow of the game, that is a natural movement. So that's why the penalty wasn't given, and that's why I wasn't overly angry at the decision.
I do want to go on record. I do think that I would be very aggrieved if that had been given against us, because I don't actually disagree with anything you've said there, Joe. I don't disagree with any of it. But I think what makes me feel more aggrieved is last week's performance. And I don't want to dredge up ancient history, but it doesn't sit right with me that that's a handball, and then inconclusive evidence to say it hit McAllister's hand is a handball, but the actual ball hitting your hand isn't. And that's the point I think I'm trying to get at here. The rules are so confusing and they are interpreted so differently by different officials. It's really hard as a fan to sit there and be like, well, hang on, why is that not a handball if it's hit his hand in the penalty area? I don't know. Dagan, do you think I'm being too harsh?
I mostly agree with Joe, and I think it does come down to, you know, whether the perceived handball was leading to a goal, right, directly, by the offensive player, whereas I feel like the defensive players do get a little more latitude if they're in a natural position. With that said, I don't know if I tweeted out during the game, like, it's clear that a natural position is any position that prevents Brighton from scoring a goal when it comes to a handball. Because we've seen, several over the past few weeks, early in the Tottenham game when the score was still 0-0. And then was it in the Brentford game late? It was, where there was sort of a handball sort of right on the end line. That, it was a natural position. Again, his arms were spread out wide. So many guys put their hands behind their back to avoid that. I thought, and they were like, well, he was too close. He couldn't avoid it. I was like, sure he could by tucking his arms. Anyway. So yeah, Tom, I feel your frustration over the perceived inconsistency of, when that call would benefit us. It doesn't seem like it does. And either way,
and this is why I think it'd be really beneficial to hear what the VAR is saying, because I thought the ref did a really good job. Purvis went up to him and said, like, "Was a handball?" And he went, "I'm checking." And that's why it would be really good to hear what they're saying, because if then you hear the official say, "No, that's not a penalty; it's a natural position," then fans like myself go, "Okay, I understand where you're coming from. It's about that transparency." But we've spoken about that enough in our most recent podcasts. So let's shove that away, because I don't want to be negative, because actually today's performance was excellent. I think it's one of our best away performances, of our Premier League era, if I'm being brutally honest. Again, these are points. These are turning points in games. You can feel that injustice, and it's how you respond to that injustice that you perceive that determines what you're going to get out of that game. And we responded so well. We've talked about the substitutions being made. Really disappointing to see Ferguson come off, Joe. He hit the crossbar and he had a great chance, which is actually what led to his injury. How much of a miss do you think he'll be in the next run of games?
Absolutely huge. We know just how good that boy is. And it's more the worry of not having the depth that scares me. Not as much, Danny Welbeck's going to have to start, because Danny Welbeck in the last few games has been absolutely phenomenal when he's played. So it's more that if Danny Welbeck, who has a history of being injured, gets injured, then we're a little bit stuck, because then we've got to rely on Dennis Undav, who hasn't set the world on fire when he has played for us. In the most polite of terms, but yeah, absolutely glad for him that he's going to be missing that Wembley trip. I'm sure he would have been absolutely chomping at the bit to play at that stadium, to play in an occasion such as a FA Cup semi-final and try and beat Manchester United. And but I go into that game with full faith in Danny Welbeck. He's played those occasions before. He's played massive games in his career, so I've got no qualms about Danny Welbeck being our main man. But again, it's just about that depth and not having that depth at the moment.
Fingers crossed that, Ferguson's injury isn't too bad and he does have a speedy recovery and is back for the next league game. Now, Dagan, we've already spoken a little bit briefly about those turning points, and you spoke very well about saying when Welbeck come on, that was another huge turning point in the game. Now, Dagan, a lot of our fans don't seem to like Danny Welbeck. I don't understand why, but he came on and he did what Danny Welbeck does very well, and that's be a fantastic professional. Led that line really, really well. What have you made of Danny Welbeck and his recent run of games? Because he's been really effective.
He has, and when I was last on, I've been critical of Welbeck, especially in moments where the game is tied. I feel like he's shown a lot of his strength when we're ahead. Today I felt like was different in that he was operating from a position where we were down and tied, and was really instrumental both in build-up play as a finisher. But he was finding space today in a way that often I feel like he sort of settles or has trouble getting the ball on his feet, and he was really decisive today, really into the open areas, and making quick decisions and quick passes. It was sort of I wasn't watching the sport when he was the youthful talent that I've heard so much about, but it looked shades of what I've heard today.
Yeah, he's one of those players that when he's on song, he's a fantastic player, and he is the one that drew parity in the game. It was a really nice work cross by Pascal Gross, and Danny Welbeck directs a well-placed header in off the post, which was actually, Joe, his third goal in 8 games. So we're seeing a nice little resurgence from that guy Welbs. What did you make of the goal, mate?
Pretty much just exact copy of the Brentford goal, wasn't it? It's a cross coming in, and he buries the header in that way. And that's what you get with Daniel Welbeck. You get a presence up front, and if you put that ball into the box, there's every chance he's going to get on the end of it and bury it with the class that he does. And you're right, Tom. I don't understand the hatred towards Daniel Welbeck. And whenever you see his name, like one person tweeted when he came on, they quoted the tweet and they put, "Well, that's the game done then." And then he scores 3 minutes later. I just replied saying, "Lol." Like, you got that wrong, didn't you? And at the time, I was feeling a little bit negative because it looked like, as you said at the start of the show, Tom, things were sort of going away from us, and it looked like to be one of those games. And I was thinking, oh, great, here we go. This is the turning point. And, you know, happy to be proved wrong again, because De Zerbi's players just don't seem to give any mind to that sort of mentality of this game's getting away from us. Now it's 1-0. Get a goal and you're back on top, because what did we have in that first half of the first 35 minutes? 71% possession, something crazy like that. So we were always in control of the game. We were always going to be creating more chances. So actually, when you look at the stats and the facts of what's in front of you from this team, never ever doubt them, because they always seem to be in games no matter what. And that's something most of our fans, including me, have to take forward, that this is a different Brighton side that we're seeing under De Zerbi. It is just unbelievably just mentally strong, and I just love to see it. It's fantastic to watch.
And sometimes I myself need the positive people like yourself, Joe, because I've seen some things. I saw Brighton lose to 9-man Warsaw at the Withdean. I've seen some things. So, you know, it's it would have been very easy for Brighton to go within their shell after the injuries, the perceived injustice at the penalty decision, going a goal down to a complete fluke. But actually, Dagan, Brighton attempted 12 shots in that first half, which is the joint most that Chelsea have ever faced at Stamford Bridge on record. And the last time that happened was in 2003, 2004. So it goes back to what we've been saying, the belief. The team are just constantly believing that, yeah, we can get something out of this. What do you make of that stat?
I mean, looking at our run of last 4 games, ho-hum. That's just business as usual. And Tom, I mean, that probably draws a really definitive line between the kind of experiences you've had and the kind of experiences I've had being here just this season. Because this is the way Brighton plays, as far as I know. This is who we are. We're this good. You know, we're one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 teams in the Premier League. In the words of Dennis Green, we are who, or they are who we thought they were. That's a American football quote. But that's what I would say about Chelsea today. They are who we thought they were. They are not a giant. They are not a titan. Like, there's a comfortability that I see in so many fans to say the top 6 when they mean the big 6. Those aren't the same thing. We are one of the top 6 right now, and I guess we're still in 7th, but I really feel firmly that we're one of the best 6 teams, and I think Villa is one of the best 6 teams, along with us. But the typical big 6 is not the best 6, and I hope
no, of course not.
Understand that.
And people tend to misunderstand the idea of big with just being money. Teams that have historically had lots and lots of money. And just really quickly, Dagan, I'm going to send you a link, my friend, to some YouTube videos if you haven't seen them, called The Withdean Years. And maybe you could just, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad you haven't had to experience that. But it's well worth a watch. And anyone who's watching, check out The Withdean Years, because they are just, wonderful. So the half drew to a close. As I say, that stat, 12 shots on target. It was a masterclass from Kepa, really, Joe, that kept Chelsea in it for as long as they were. I mean, the second half Brighton started like a house on fire. They were excellent. Mitoma, Enciso going close. Enciso hit the post. Welbeck, unfortunate with the rebound. It was just all Brighton. What did you make of Kepa's performance?
Annoying. Really, really annoying because he's not that good. He's just not. And it's one of those where you think it's going to be a goalkeeping masterclass like we've seen so many times. I remember Emi Martinez keeping Aston Villa in it. I remember Nick Pope keeping Newcastle in it when they came to our play.
Performance at the Amex season.
There's so many more where I was just thinking, for goodness sake, why is it when they come to play against Brighton that they actually decide to turn up? When, Chelsea fans have slated Kepa till the cows come home, like in previous seasons and in this season, maybe they're a little bit more confident with him. I don't know what's happening with him and Mendy, who's in the best form. But it's just really irritating. He doesn't look like a goalkeeper as well, does he? He's tiny and he's putting off save after save after save. And you're just thinking, what are you and what have you done with the real Kepa?
No, you're right. We've come across so many keepers that when they play against us, it seems like they just turn it on. I remember, Jack Butland always used to be one of those keepers that always would pull out a worldie when they play. Martinez, as you say, for Villa. Whenever we play them, he just seems to be everywhere. And it was so frustrating. But he wasn't the only keeper, Dagan, that was particularly busy in that second half. Bobby Sanchez had to make a really good double save to keep us in it. James forces the initial stop from him, and then he has to be alert to stop the second from Mudryk. Good work from Big Bob, who's been on the sidelines for the last couple of weeks.
Most definitely. I think there's something to be said. I think those stops from Sanchez are tough because he didn't get a lot of reps in the game. And I wonder about keepers sometimes. It seems like they get in a flow, they make a couple of stops early, and then all of a sudden they're just in the zone and they're locked in and they're stopping everything. And I think that's sometimes why we end up with the one shot on goal, one goal, because our keeper's just been kind of having a leisurely time back there, and then all of a sudden is called to action. And I think that was very much the case where, Sanchez got caught a little wrong-footed on that first half goal. You're just not loose, you're not confident yet. To me, that's a big part of what we saw today is, Kepa started off hot and stayed in his zone.
Very true. It's tough, isn't it? When you're a goalkeeper, you're in a position where, like Rob Sanchez was today, he didn't have a lot to do at all really in the game. So it shows that he has to be really focused to make those stops, because one of those goes in and it's a completely different game. So, fair play to him for that. But not even Kepa, who was in some pretty spectacular form today, I'm not going to lie. Not even Kepa could keep out what was an absolute thunder bastard. Now, Dagan, I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase before. The phrase thunder bastard is often used to describe a shot from very long range that no keeper in the world is going to save. And that is the word that I'm going to use to describe this goal. Apologies for the light swearing here, guys, but it was an absolute, thunder bastard. Joe. Yeah. It was fantastic. Solly March, I'm actually going to, before we just talk about the goal, let's talk about Solly March, because he was excellent in the build up to that goal, winning the ball back, playing it into Enciso, who had all the time in the world to curl in what I genuinely think will be the goal of the season. What did you make of it?
What did I make of it, Tom? I don't know. I honestly that's probably, I said in the group chat, it's probably one, if not the best Premier League goal we've ever scored. One of the cleanest strikes of a football I've ever seen a Brighton player do. There's someone in the comments, Lewis Punk again, saying, weirdly, some CFC fans are blaming Kepa for the Enciso goal today, even after he saved their asses. I don't get how you can blame your goalkeeper for not saving what is, as I say, probably one of the cleanest strikes of a football. Well up there. I don't know if you saw it, Dagan. Alexis McAllister's goal that never was against Leicester. That for me would have been the goal of the season. But Enciso's pretty much exactly the same, maybe a little bit less power, but the placement on that, he couldn't have walked to the goal with the ball and put it any better. It was just like, I'm sure the Brighton fans behind the goal saw that was coming into the top corner. Like, I would love to get their perspective on it, and I've got a few mates that went to the game who I'm playing football with tomorrow. I believe one of them was right behind the goal, so I'm so excited to get his perspective. But yeah, Andrew in the comments has said there are no words that I can express how I feel right now. And when you see, what is he, 19 years old, having the audacity to do that to win the game for your team, long may that continue. And another unbelievable find from South America. We just keep plucking them out the air. And fans are getting so frustrated. Other fans are getting so frustrated with us. How did Brighton keep doing this? I saw someone say, "What even is an Enciso?" Well, you've bloody well seen what an Enciso is today, because he has got everything to go right to the very top of football. He can go as far as he wants, that boy, because he has got class.
Yeah, it was something genuinely special, wasn't it, Dagan, that goal? And I felt that it would have taken something special to beat Kepa today, and boy, did we get it.
Yeah, no doubt. Joe, I was going to cite that exact goal that never was from McAllister is what this reminded me of. Is the only thing I could compare it to that we've seen this year, certainly, and to you guys' point, maybe ever from a Brighton uniform. What was really interesting, and not to besmirch the incredible goal or the performance, but did you guys hear what Zerbi said about Enciso post-game? This is great. After the goal, he didn't like him. That's the mentality. Unbelievable. But I felt the same way. I did feel like that. I mean, and he had worked his tail off the whole game, right? And certainly, if anyone deserved to take a sigh of relief, but it was a worrying time down the stretch after the goal, because it looked like Chelsea had way more control of the ball and far more chances than they had up to that point, which I think underscores how vital Enciso was aside from the goal. His energy was infectious, and he was everywhere creating pressure. And then, Matoma and Sali and Estupiñán on the outsides were able to win the ball and cut into the gaps. And Caicedo was Caicedo. But when you've got someone in that 10 spot in the middle of the field just running around with reckless abandon, it makes a difference. So, it will all be about the goal, but I really do think, as much as anything, Enciso changed the whole complexity of the game today. And it was an easy man of the match choice ahead of it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, as I said earlier, his energy was infectious, and it really carried us through some tough parts, especially in that second half after that second goal, where you're right, Dagan, because Chelsea came right back into it. And Joe, I mean, that final 10, 15 minutes or so was hard. And then, of course, the 6 minutes added on at the end. It felt like that was some of the longest minutes as being a Brighton fan. And you could really see some very, very tired legs out there. Adam Webster having to come off with what I believe was cramp. So yeah, the boys really, really put in a shift today, didn't they?
Yeah, as you say about the time that was going on and it felt so slow, I said in a previous podcast, it's only going to get worse towards the end of the season. It really is, because the emotions are so high. And for what this result meant for us, because Aston Villa won today, Spurs lost. I believe Brentford, I don't know what Brentford did. Did they lose?
They
lost. Fulham won, but I think Fulham are out the race anyway. But all of these results, we've got to, keep up with Brentford and Aston Villa. I know we've got 2 games in hand, but those games in hand are Newcastle and Manchester City. So how many points we get from those, I don't know. And as I said, the emotions towards the end of the season are just going to be ridiculous. And it was so important for us to see this game out, and for what that means for how the players are putting across their goals to us. They're saying, look, we aren't going to lose this game. We're not going to let this game slip away from us. And as the 10 minutes went on, I was just getting more and more at ease with it. Everything Chelsea were doing, everything Chelsea were throwing at us just didn't seem to have that bite. Their teeth just weren't sharp enough to break down a Brighton team that were just unbelievably comfortable. And we'll talk about man of the match shouts in a minute, but Lewis Dunk, the composure of the man, some of the tackles he made, some of the chest backs to Sanchez and pass backs to Sanchez, commanding that back line as if it was a school game. He was just like, yeah, the coolest I've seen him all season, I think. And it's so important to have that as well in those business minute, at end of the game, to have a captain that's going to keep the players just, look, if we manage this game perfectly, we come away from here with a win. We come away from here with a double over Chelsea Football Club. And that is no mean feat. Again, we know Chelsea are in rotten form, but it is no mean feat to get 6 points off of Chelsea in any season. So the composure was just unreal. And as I say, the more those 10 minutes went on, I was just like, okay, we've got this. We've actually got this.
Well, I'm glad you were calm, Joe, because I certainly wasn't. I do think that you're right. I don't think Chelsea really did too much to threaten us. Not like obviously they poured forward. But the reality is I never felt like we were too much under the cosh. And as you say, like Lewis Dunk just exudes that calmness. It was when it was on like the 87th minute or something like that. He just does his little quintessential Lewis Dunk chest back to Sanchez. I just thought, that just takes so much confidence in your own ability. And Dagan, what did you make of those last 10 minutes? Were you sort of more Team Joe, where you were just, yeah, man, we got this? Or were you more Team Tom, where you were like, oh my God, just blow the whistle, ref?
I was firmly on Team Tom here. Firmly. It was terrifying. But just given what we endured last week, it just felt like, please not again. Let's not. Again, it's Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, but it would have been dropped points. There's no other way to describe it, especially given, if we lose a lead, despite having, come from behind. And so, no, I was holding on for dear life, just, gripping the coffee table. Please, like, go, time, go. The last, minute beyond the 96, I was like, we're come on, guys. Let's blow this thing dead. Abjectly terrifying. That's the description.
I'm glad it wasn't just me. Yeah, because I think it hit 96. I was like, we were up their end, and I was like, yes, okay, that's done. And then the ref kept playing, and I was like, no, ref, stop. And I think they got a free kick. And I was like, no, ref, stop the game. But the game did end, and we did come away with the win, the double, Joe, the double over Chelsea, a club that took Graham Potter away, that took our player of the season, that took our entire coaching setup, that took Paul Whitstanley away, a club that has really tried to just become Brighton and Hove Albion. We've done the double over them. How does that make you feel?
Well, Tom, you will remember I was on BBC Radio 5 Live the day before we beat Chelsea 4-1 at the Amex, and I spoke to, I believe, the secretary of Chelsea's supporters club. I don't know if that's right, but she was some important person at Chelsea. And she told me, Tom, it's just business. And to what I have to say in reply to that is, it's absolute pleasure doing business with you, Chelsea Football Club. Thank you very much.
It really was. As Jason has just put in the comments, we absolutely battered Chelsea today, Dagan. We took it to them. We took it to one of the big six, and we comfortably looked the better team.
Without a doubt. The passing today I thought was exquisite. The quickness of change, the confidence in each exchange. I don't know what the passing accuracy percentage was, up through the Enciso goal. I think after that, I think we gave the ball away a little bit more. But it wasn't because Chelsea wasn't putting any pressure on us. It was just they were a step slow through the entire match. And we just looked the superior team. If you'd have said, which one of these teams' players cost 600 million pounds, I think few would guess theirs. It was incredible, but not surprising. And that's the best part of the whole thing, is it's incredible, but not surprising.
Very well said. I think our entire squad today would have cost about 55 million pounds ish, with Adam Webster being the most expensive player on the pitch, coming in at about 22 million pounds.
That's 10%. 10% of Chelsea, not even 10. less than 10%.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, they started Mudryk, and he cost
Ridiculous.
them what, 100 million, was it, or was that the other guy? I can't keep up with Chelsea's spending.
Enzo Fernandez cost
Yeah.
100 million pounds, and if you asked who is the 100 million pounds midfielder on that team, you would guess Caicedo, you would guess Alexis McAllister, because they are going to be 100 million pounds centre midfielders. I don't think we're under any illusion that we're going to keep them this summer. I hope we do, of course. But they are the type of players that are going to justify that price tag. Getting a guy from the Portuguese league who's come and been absolutely schooled by 21-year-old Moises and fellow countryman Alexis McAllister, who he picks up for less than 15 million pounds for both, is just embarrassing. And Chelsea's business has been nothing short of embarrassing. So if you want to spout it's just business to me, I think your club need to do a little bit better business. And Todd Boehly is probably one of the biggest jokes to Premier League football for a very long time. The guy has not a clue what he's doing. He's literally just copying clubs' sort of structures and hoping that it works. But it doesn't work. Not if you've got a man that has no idea what he's doing. They missed out on the one man that knows what he's doing is Tony Bloom, and he's going nowhere. He wouldn't go anywhere else other than Brighton. He's doing it at USG as well. They're doing unbelievably well. I think they won in Europe during the week. So there is a man that knows what he's doing with football. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was. I mean, there were rumours that apparently Todd Boehly wanted to buy Brighton. How true that is, I don't know. But obviously, Dagan, I mean, I don't know if you follow baseball, but Todd Boehly, the owner of the Dodgers,
That's
is
right.
it?
That's right.
And my understanding is that he's quite an astute businessman when it comes to baseball. Do you think that skill transfers over to football, to soccer?
There's a steep learning curve. The game is completely different, right? And we're seeing him try something, and it could work 3 years from now. These, they've bought a ton of incredible young talent. They just aren't a team yet. And so I think, if he continues to feel like it's worth the investment and take the time, Chelsea could be right back on top of the world soon. But I think it's going to take a little time for them to do that. And they're going to find the right manager. And right now it's a mess. And I'm not sure what manager of high quality is going to trust that they're going to get the time they need to be successful. And so, while he has the pockets to bring them success, will he have the temperament is a bigger question going forward.
And I also think it comes down to the fans as well. Will the Chelsea fans have the patience? I mean, obviously there is a certain level of resentment in regards to Graham Potter, but the reality is that you want a project manager. Graham Potter's your man. He knows how to turn a team around, and he wasn't given the time. And as much as it brought me a sense of joy to see him lose his job, but there was a sense of sadness as well, actually, there, because yeah, we're not going to go into that. I am going to talk about this comment from Kieran before we go into the man of the match, just because I wanted to read it out, because it just says what you said, Dagan. My comment during the second half was that if you were watching this with no prior knowledge and you were asked which team was playing Champions League football, you'd have to conclude that it was Brighton. And on that bombshell, Joe, who was your player of the match?
Oh, so many to pick from. As Dagan has said, whether that's Enciso, McAllister played really well when he was moved back. Pascal Gross was everywhere. Solly March again, fantastic. Karim Matoma causing so many issues. I'm going to name the whole team, Tom. You're going to have to stop me. But I'm going to conclude with Lewis Dunk. Because I thought in every single moment we needed our captain today, he was there for us. And he's the man that made me feel so cool towards the end. Because if you watch your captain do a casual chest back to your goalkeeper in the 85th minute or wherever it was, then you're on to a winner. So Lewis Dunk for me.
Very good, very good. How about you, Dagan? Who was your player of the match?
Well, as I said earlier, I think it's Enciso. If I could go with the Olympic podium, model of awarding the man of the match, I'd go, gold medal to Enciso. I think the silver would go to Dunk. So I'm with you, Joe, and I would give the bronze to Caicedo, who was just, ever present as he usually is.
Some very strong choices there. It's a tough one because, Enciso just brought so much energy with him onto the pitch. And I think, as I say, him and Welbeck were the game changers today in terms of that energy they brought to the pitch. And obviously they're the two that scored the goals. But I rated Purvis. I thought Purvis had a good game. Matoma, we haven't even talked about some of the dribbles that Matoma was doing. A few years ago, Dagan, we went to Stamford Bridge and Eden Hazard absolutely schooled us. Like, he just dribbled past our players as if they weren't even there. And today we saw Matoma do exactly the same thing. So I thought Matoma was brilliant. But I think I'm going to go with Lewis Dunk as well, Joe, because I think, Dunky is he's just captain fantastic. He has been just a level above this season, an absolute level above. And I know I've said it again, but I cannot understand how he does not make the England team. He is the best English centre-back in the Premier League. There's no question about it. And it's just, I wish Gareth Southgate could see that. So yeah, Lewis Dunk for me, Lewis Dunk. So let's round off this episode then, gents, by talking about our next game, which is the FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United at Wembley. Now, Dagan, I'm going to come to you first, my friend. Because I'm interested, does the FA Cup sort of translate how important it is to a fan based in the United States? Because I suppose for English fans or for fans in the UK, when you grow up as a kid, the FA Cup is the game that's on terrestrial TV. So it's on TV. You don't have to pay for the channel. You just get it. And it's always been such a huge part of like English football. So like, do you as an American fan, do you sort of like get how important it is to British fans?
I have had so much fun talking about the FA Cup here and trying to explain, one, that geographically, England is about the size of the state of North Carolina in area. The entire United Kingdom is about the size of North Carolina and Virginia, where I am, combined. And then I say, within that little area, there are roughly 700 teams participating in the same competition. They realize, like, wow, it's like every little town has its own team. And then you start talking about the tiers of English football, and it's a nice construct to kind of talk about how the whole thing works. But the opportunity, for a little team, to advance through the tournament, it's sort of the David and Goliath story, that it's what endears college basketball to many American fans as sort of a favorite, sort of playoff. And it's because of that element that these smaller schools that no one's ever heard of can go up against the giants of the world. So for me, it translates a lot. I think, maybe the average American fan doesn't know a lot about it, but people are really interested and they're like, that's awesome. So it's been fun for me. And, here we are 2 wins away.
I'm really glad to hear that, Dagan. And just briefly, before I come to you on that, Joe, Dagan, are you excited to see that the Premier League tour of the United States in the summer? Because like Brighton, Fulham, and some other teams as well are coming to see. You're gonna go catch a game at all?
I'm going to try to catch at least 2 of the 3. The first game is a rematch of today's. They're going to be in Philadelphia, Brighton versus Chelsea. I think we're also playing Brentford in Atlanta on the 26th of July, and then the third game is in New Jersey, I think on that last Sunday, the 30th, maybe, against Newcastle.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I really hope that in between those fixtures we play some MLS teams, because I'd love to see, like, Brighton Hove Albion versus Portland Timbers, or something mad like that, because I just think that's what we want to tap the American market. What a way to do it. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Joe, Wembley next. We've talked a little bit about some of the players that are going to miss that fixture, Veltman, Ferguson, which is slightly disappointing, but are you confident that we can go there? Manchester United, they've got their own injury issues. Is this perhaps the best opportunity we've had for a long time to get to the final?
100%. Man United are there for the taking. I've got no doubts about that at all. I say that we'll probably lose 4-0 now. But see how they performed in Europe in the week. I think they've got a game tomorrow or Monday. I don't know when they're playing. But they've got 2 games in between the time that we've got a rest now. So that's going to bode well for us. And I'm just so excited for the day, Tom. I think no matter what happens, it's going to be such a fantastic day to be there again. I remember the last Wembley trip against Man City 4 years ago. It was so special. It felt unbelievable. And I knew we were going to go there and get beat because it was Man City at the time. And at the time, still today, they are easily the best team in England. And again, we're going into this one with a different feeling completely because we feel like we can win the game. And as you say, Man United have got their own problems of their, I think Maguire can't play. I think he's suspended. So do they have to start with Phil Jones? That would be fun.
I actually think that Maguire playing would have suited us quite well.
Probably, most likely. But they've got 3 of their centre backs out. 3 of their, they're going to have to go with their 4th choice and Lindelof, who isn't great. So I'm so excited for it and to be up there filming the content with Albion Obsessed as well. Guys, if you're watching this on video, there is a flag behind me. It says Pride of the South Coast waved into Wembley with the Albion Obsessed logo on it. If you see that, do come over to us. We're going to be doing lots of fan interviews. We want to get as much fan interaction as possible to just capture this fantastic day so that we can show fans like Dagan who can't be there. We want you to be there with us in spirit. So we want to bring that to you as well. So hopefully we can do that. And hopefully we can go there and get the win. I know the ladies lost 3-2 in their semi-finals today, so absolutely gutted for them. But how well they played. Melissa got the girls ticking really well. And let's hope we can translate that into the WSL as well, because we will stay up if we play like that. So a bit gutted it's not going to be a double header, if you like, when it comes to the final time. But obviously we've got to beat Man United first. And I believe we've got the best opportunity that we'll have in a very long time to get to an FA Cup final.
Very well said, Joe. And yeah, keep an eye on our socials because we've got loads of really nice content planned. We want to get as much fan interaction as possible. And, as Twisted Sparky 06 has said, it's the best opportunity we've had since the 82-83 season. So maybe it's just a time we get a bit of revenge on that cup final that had to be replayed. So yeah, keep an eye on the socials.
Are you excited for it, Tom?
You know what I am.
How are you feeling about it?
You know what the most exciting thing I am is, and it's going to Wembley with my dad to watch Brighton. For me, that is the single most wonderful thing about it. Getting to the FA Cup semi-final is magical and wonderful, but going to watch that with my dad, who went to the 83 Cup final. For me, that's what Brighton's about. Brighton is about family. Brighton is family to me. So, I'm just so stoked I get to go and see it with my dad. So, Dad, if you're watching, or Dad, when you watch, I love you.
100%. I want to echo that, Tom, as well. I'm going with my mum and my dad, who haven't seen eye to eye over the years, aren't together anymore. But to be there with my mum and with my dad, sharing that experience with them, is going to be so unbelievably special. So again, if Mum, Dad, if you're watching, I love you. So I want to just echo what Tom said. Stop being soppy. Move on.
No, Brighton is a family, and Dagan, it is an absolute pleasure to invite you to this family. Thank you very much, Dagan, for joining us this evening. Thank you, Joe, as well. And thank you, viewers, for watching us dissect the incredible performance that saw us walk away from Chelsea with 6 points this season. What a game it was. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen. Thank you, viewers. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. But in the meantime, wherever you may be, whenever you may be, we'll see you next time. Take care.